Um, so this is not a full episode. It's more of a let's Google the word. It's a great one. Addendum, if I'm saying that right. Addendum.
Addendum.
To our episode that will be uploaded. I think I'll upload them all together, so you, the listener, whoever's listening, won't see any difference between experiencing it. But I'm recording this a few days after we did the podcast Wednesday night. I'm doing this Saturday at 1:45, which is almost like early morning for me because as me and Shake are both degenerates, we wake up at about I woke up. Well, today was not that bad. I woke up at 10:45, but that's 3 hours ago. So, not a morning person. Wish I was, but because there was a point in the podcast where when I was about to start writing my end of things, me and Sheik got bogged down, and what I do think is a pretty interesting debate about like belief and what kind of stories work in this sort of fiction, especially sci-fi fantasy stuff like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. And so we were debating that back and forth. And by the time we were done with that, it became time to add my own stuff. I was already too beat up and tired because we were also recording late anyway. And what's it called? Yeah, because at one point she gasped like, "Hey, I'm going through the Wikipedia outline," and he says, "All right, so start adding stuff to your part of the document." And it's like, well, I'm already a bit tired, so. But I figured, I don't know, because it's fun, and I guess to be fair to myself, I don't know. But here's this document presenting a little bit more of my side of how I approach that story. And look, honestly, I think there's a real power to telling the story as is, as treating it like this chess game between Kaishik and or Kaishek, I think it is. Let's Google that one more time. Where is it? Let's see. Not to say.
Chiang Kai-shek.
Chiang
Kai-shek.
Yeah. My pitch is basically, I mean, it's breaking all the rules that she kind of laid down, but yeah, it's a chess match between these two people for the fate of China. That's sort of the guiding point between the idea. Yeah, I mean, it's because it's a 30-year story. It's almost really, if you think about it, 40 years of history that, again, if you write it as, again, this great rivalry between these two sides of this country, I think to me that's very interesting. Yeah, you don't get the little people side, but it's like I don't go for the sort of fiction for the little people. You can do that, but to me, I like the scope of things. Like, I mean, you don't even have to, not to even mention modern blockbusters. One I'm going to name check a little bit later is War for the Planet of the Apes, like the new Planet of the Apes movies that Matt Reeves did, who's now doing the Batman. But I mean, he got that feel of those movies from like Ten Commandments that Cecil B. DeMille did, Ben-Hur. And those are, well, especially Ten Commandments, like that's Moses, like that's one of the archetypes of the hero's journey. And it's like that to me is compelling and interesting. Like that's what will make me watch something. I mean, and yeah, I mean, if you don't even have to change much from the story. I mean, you could really just do it. Like, look at this. Like, attempts are made by the CCP. Yeah, so the Civil War begins. Like, these are epic campaigns. Like there's just so much here, I think. Um, the Red Army sort of, consisting of former Revolutionary Army soldiers, armed peasants. We got the warlord stuff a bit earlier. Where is that? Yeah, the Central Plains War, where there's its own civil war in the KMT. What's it called? Yeah, like warlord. You got these warlord armies. So the CCP take advantage of ring blockhouses, whatever that means. Let's see. Fortified blockhouses. Yeah, small fortification. Um, yeah, it's just this giant epic war story that goes on for 20 years, led by again these two men. I'm going to try and keep this short, so it's part of the pitch would have to be getting into these characters, these two, but again, the idea would be you're capturing two different sides of the Chinese personality through those two men. Um, you know, Warlord arms from challenge communist forces fearing losing their own men. Like I guess you don't have to add much to just do it as is, I think. Um, yeah, it's just so much cool, interesting stuff here. Like the Champa troops were former bandits to battle the communist Red Army as it advanced to undermine local. Yeah, a lot of. I don't know. It just again, it does come as to Game of Thrones to me. I guess with less emphasis on little people and just more again, you're talking more about just those big four families that we follow. Yeah, that's just so like this part is so like that's an episode. Like this is an episode right here. This is an episode. This is probably a few episodes. Well, this is an episode. That's an episode. Oh yeah, so that's an episode. The stuff I'm blocking out. That's a few episodes. That's early season 2 or all of season 2. Um, that's so I guess this is when he enters the story, but I'd have him at the beginning. I'd have it that I guess season 1 would be like this stuff basically, which I was reading this too. This would be interesting enough for its own story. There's so many different ways you could do the early history of the revolution, just independent from what this would be. And yeah, you'd include, I guess you combine a lot of characters, but yeah, you'd have Mao and Kashek at the beginning of the story, and you just see probably them being friends and then them becoming enemies, and then become friends again to fight the Japanese, and then it becomes undone at the very end with resumed fighting. I mean, I've worked with stories like this in the past. My passion project I've worked on since high school is structured similar to this. I had again, because of that high school project, I fell in love with Roman history, and I wrote a pilot centered on Augustus and Mark Antony, and I treated those characters similarly as like again the story being about these big epic rivals. That in itself kind of, I mean, if you're talking film influences, cinematography, I mean, Once Upon a Time in the West is kind of like that. You got the great David Lean movies. That there were also influences on where the Planet, the Planet of the Apes movies. So Bridge of the Why, which I still need. I watched an hour of it, and yeah, that's its own story. But I will one day return to it and give it another proper watch. But Dr. Zhivago and Lawrence Arabia, wonderful movies. And yeah, model for I guess what this could be, I guess. But again, more so because Once Upon a Time in the West is a rivalry story a little bit. There is that scope to it, which was itself an influence of Breaking Bad, which is interesting. But yeah, like that. It's just I love those kind of stories. Like, that's my stuff, my shit. And that those old movies are also an influence on the Marvel movies, which I also sort of defined my college years. And again, I've talked on air before about my growing disinterest in that form of storytelling. But again, that comes a lot from Sergio Leone's work on especially Once Upon a Time in West. But he also is good in Eddie Ugly and Fistful of Dollars, and the one I haven't seen yet, for a few dollars more. But yeah, it's just there's so much here. Again, do it as is. And it's like you just have a great story. Like look at this. Like The Long March, it's constantly interesting material. Military retreat taken on by the CCP, led by Mao, to evade the pursuit of the KMT. Numerous armies. Like, this is a giant. It's so cool to me. Like the scale of it. Brink of Annihilation by K-Shek. Like that's an episode right here. And see, here you go. In 1935, maybe you do it as a rise to power. I don't know. I don't know. That's a decision you have to make in the actual writing process, which we're not going to do, because if you're doing this as a novel, it could take a year at least, maybe more. If you're doing it as a pilot, since you're only doing essentially the first, this is a multi-season epic. With a pilot, you're only doing that first episode. I think you do a pitch Bible or a series Bible, you lay out the rest of the story. But that's quick, but it's still long. So it's quicker to do, but it's still, you have to build out everything and then actually write out a pilot, which we're not going to do right now. But it's just, this is more about showing that there's so much potential in the material itself that I think is worth it. Let's see. Pass through. Shortly after settling. Yeah, it's just. Yeah, like that could be something. You could do that story. That could be a storyline. Again, I would rather it. I don't know. Maybe you do the rise to power thing instead of Mao and Shek being in their places of power as just at the start of the story, at the start of the show or the start of the novel series, whatever this would be. Usually, because novel series, again, that usually does capture the scope of a television series, like in Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire, The Expanse, and I forget the name of the actual. It's not called The Expanse, the books. It's called something else. The Expanse. Is based off of. Well, I guess it is, but the first book isn't called The Expanse. It's called something else. Leviathan Wakes, which I did buy it in order to kind of study it for my own, another story based on Castro. Same approach. I do think the Castro thing's a bit more interesting, and doing the cold Cuban Revolution and going through, again, 40 years of Cuban history. But this is a similar genre, I think. Yes, I picked that book up for that. I obviously Game of Thrones, and there's other stuff like this. But as for the world of this, so because originally the debate would mean shit, which cheek is it a space opera or is it a grittier, like one planet type thing? And obviously I wanted the space opera because I get Star Wars and Star Trek and Mass Effect, and he wanted the one planet sort of thing. And yeah, I do agree. I think the grittiness of the story, you want it to be a little smaller in scope. I was actually thinking, again, this is a pure geeky. This is the fun of sci-fi fantasy. You get to build your own worlds. And one idea I thought of for this is you could do it. I'll write it down. You would have it where, imagine, if you will. Well, she kind of talked about it, but I'd go even further. It's sort of he had the idea of foundation, but this would be, foundation is millennia. I was thinking, well, what if, mankind goes to the stars, shit fizzles, goes to like Alpha Centauri or stuff like that, and it fizzles, dies out, and we follow one of the planets still out there. So mankind out in close interstellar space, but civilization. So again, it's still post-apocalyptic. I get there's this thing with post-apocalyptic fiction is it kind of lets you do. I don't know. There's just so much potential there for interesting stories. I guess it's an easy world to build out. Has collapsed, and this planet is one of the planets still left. Then we go from there. So then Japan, its own planet. I mean, I know she pictured as a moon, which I think is interesting. But yeah, I was also thinking, again, running with the Planet of the Apes thing, you could do it just as taking place in America after it collapses. In America after it collapses. And yeah, again, War of the Planet of the Apes style. I mean, Walking Dead, obviously. There's a few others, but and then you get the same grittiness of like a war story. I get like in terms of tone, this wouldn't be that different from doing like a Vietnam or World War II movie, because that's itself what Planet of the Apes is drawing from, or like a Western, like Unforgiven. I mean, the John Ford Westerns, which again have a lot less cultural relevance right now, but I promise they're wonderful movies. And yeah, so Shek and Mao would be two generals and two factions in post-apocalyptic, or even just you don't have to do like a nukes and killed everything on the planet. Just do post-apocalyptic America. Just in that way, give it the feel of actual history. If you were to film a real movie about the Chinese Civil War, in tone, that wouldn't be that different from just doing that same story in post-fall America or post-collapse America. So no advanced technology, just some gritty stuff. The real world is no speculative elements beyond the idea of a collapse. So no, the force isn't a thing. The thing from Altered Carbon isn't a thing. Like no Marvel advanced Iron Man shit. Again, tone wise, it could really, because it gives the feeling like, oh, this could really happen, which is always interesting, I guess. And people I think like the most, because there's a great word for it, used for Superman. The director Richard Donner, he just died this year, unfortunately. He passed away, but he had a great word. It's vermacelitude, I think we called it. Vermacelitude. Vermicelitude.
Verisimilitude. Verisimilitude.
Verisimilitude. Very complicated word. Well, maybe not that complicated, but yeah. So that's kind of it, really. It's again, I guess that's the answer to the Cheeks question is like, well, add stuff. And it's like, well, you don't really have to. You can literally probably, I kind of actually did this kind of way. Copy and paste this whole document and just sort of space out each part of the revolution or the war. And once you're done, I don't know how long that would take, but you basically have your 3 or 5 season whatever arc. It's that, to me, it's that simple. It's just that good of a story already. That's really I guess that's what I wanted to say. We're going for this 20 minutes, so I think it's probably good to cut it now. Yeah, that's really all I got. All right, so short episode, just again more just again, as that word said, addendum, if I said that right. Addendum.
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 Addendum. Addendum.
That's it. So we just did our
Addendum.
and we're done. All right. So thanks for tuning in if you have, and see you, I guess, whenever me and Sheik and even maybe Raj come and do a next episode. Because I mean, this is a fun fact. We might do. We're talking about topics, and I love music. Sheik loves music, and Raj loves music. But me and Raj actually bonded in high school first over music and music history. So that might be a tight little rabbit hole to go down at some point together. So we're gonna look up for that. And other than that, that's all I got. So on that note, have a good day or good night wherever you're watching this. And peace.